So welcome to this session in Authenticate Virtual Summit in June 2021. We are going to give you some updates on FIDO deployments and recognition in the European Union. And the ones who will present today are Jaromir Talir, a technical fellow at the CZ.NIC and member of the eIDAS technical subgroup, and myself, Sebastian Elfors, senior solutions architect at Yubico. The agenda for today is FIDO deployments for eIDAS. Then we get an update from Jaromir about CZ.NIC MyID project. Then we're moving on to ETSI and ENISA reporting of FIDO, and finally there is a Q&A. So first of all, here's an update on FIDO deployments for eIDAS in the EU. First of all, here's an overview of FIDO government deployments in Europe. So on the left-hand side, we find CZ.NIC MyID. Jaromir will explain all of this to you in a moment, but just to give you an introduction, FIDO is here used for eIDAS schemes. They got it approved for the medium substantial level in 2020 and has been received high recognition in 2021. Then we have France, ANSI, which is the Standardizations Institute in France. They have recently issued a guide to zero trust models, and FIDO is their recommended standard. Norway, they have a FIDO scheme that is being used for, in particular, the Norwegian healthcare sector. And this is an eIDAS scheme that is currently being approved by the Norwegian agency. In Sweden, we have eID, which is used for Swedish universities, meaning that students can log in and they can use FIDO for that authentication. On the right-hand side, we find the United Kingdom. They have two schemes. First of all, the National Health Service, NHS, where FIDO is being used in particular for Windows logon and schemes like that. And second, there is a gov.uk Verify installation that is managed and operated by the Cabinet Office. They are now recognizing FIDO as an authentication standard. If you want to know more, please follow the link at the bottom to the complete list of FIDO government deployments and recognitions around the world. Here's a recap of the eIDAS components. The eIDAS regulation came in force in 2014. And on the left-hand side, we find a pillar called electronic identification, eID. And the purpose of eID schemes is cross-border access for citizens in any European country to gain access to any public service in the EU. And that is achieved by so-called eIDAS nodes. There are three assurance levels. The first one is low, second is substantial, and the third one is high. And the demands for authentication, identification, and enrollment increase for each level. Finally, there is a notification of national eID schemes, which means that each EU member state can create and get an eID scheme approved by their agency. And when it's approved, then it can be notified on the EU level. On the right-hand side, we find qualified trust service providers. And the one that matters the most for FIDO and authentication is some signature and seal creation, in particular when those signatures are created centrally. In that case, authentication is of great importance, and FIDO can be used as such authentication scheme. And here's an overview how to use FIDO in eIDAS eID schemes. FIDO can be used for authentication, and that's the part where FIDO plays its main role. In order to create an eID scheme, identification and enrollment are also necessary, and that is needed in addition to FIDO in order to create an eID scheme. If you also add authorization to this identity model, you can implement systems for identity and access management as well. And finally, here's an update on the eIDAS eID rollout in the European Union. In the past 3 years, many countries have rolled out eID schemes, and first of all, Germany got their eID notified in 2018. Then many other countries followed in 2019 and 2020, and now in 2021, we have schemes from France, Malta, and Sweden that are pre-notified and are under review. And the aim and the goal of all of this is that all EU citizens will be able to use online self-service across the EU by using eIDAS. So over to you, Jaromir.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you for the introduction and possibility to speak at this FIDO event. So I would like to share with you some information about the one particular project called MyID. It's in Czech, it's MyID, and relations to FIDO. But first, let me to introduce you to who we are. CZ.NIC is top-level domain registry for Czech Republic for the domain .cz, and it's an association of legal entities. It composed from ISPs, registrars, and the registrants, and those are entities that actually involve or influence the driving the organization. The organization itself is non-for-profit. The profit must be spent only for the internal projects. It's not distributed to members. There's more than 1 million domains and several 100,000 of contacts information as the domain owners or administrative contacts and things like this. So our registry has always been the registry for identities, let's say. There are 45 registrars. Those are companies that directly sell domains. There is indirect model. We don't sell it directly, but via registrars. There is 28 registrars in Czech Republic and 17 outside CZ. And we are doing quite a lot of interesting stuff. Just check the website and you will find more information. So in the overall internet industry, there is a big discussion about how to fight illegal content. Even though people differ in the opinion how to actually recognize which content is illegal or not, there is a common agreement that the illegal content is usually linked to fake identities. And in case of the domain, there are definitely possibility to register fake identities as a domain owners. Even though we have the contract with the registrars that actually sells domains, and by the contract they are obliged to make some reasonable effort to verify those data, this is not sufficient. The verification is expensive, and they do it to some extent, not fully. And at the end, the registry deals with those issues because we are reached by police that there is some domain with the illegal content possibility, and it's registered for a fake domain. And actually, the rules for registration rules allows us to delete domain if we find out that the identity is fake. And the most recent news about the European regulation called Network Information Security 2, it's a new version of the existing regulation, actually propose something similar that it suggests for the top-level domain registries to actually verify domain owners. So we thought that maybe having the full identity solution service may be the solution. And so 10 years ago, we started this MyID service. From the view of the domain registry, it can be seen as the one specific internal registrar that only serves for registering the contact objects in the registry. And this means that the account owner for the MyID, they can immediately use this account to associate it with his domain. And also the existing contacts in the registry may be easily transferred to this MyID service. And there are two specific features of this service. And one, of course, is the single sign-on via some authentication protocols. And the second feature is the verification of contact data, because even though 10 years ago, there was already possibilities to use like a sign with Google, sign with Facebook or something like that, these identities didn't provide the verified data. So we thought for the service providers, it could be interesting to verify the data. We started the service in 2010, and it is free for both local and foreign users. There is just a small fee for the service providers that actually want the status of verification for the account. For the 10 years, we have implemented all possible authentication protocols. We started OpenID 2.0, Later on, we added SAML for academic and enterprise and golf services. And we also implemented OpenID Connect in 2015, but there is just a slow migration from OpenID 2.0 to OpenID Connect. With regards to verification of the users, there are several levels of verification that we have implemented over time. There is a mandatory check of email and phone. We sent an email and SMS to the provided data that during the registration. So it's this is inevitable, but there is an additional optional check where we send another PIN to snail mail postal address via normal letter. And if the user will put the PIN back, we know that the postal address exists as well. And at the end, there is an optional full identity check where the people must come somewhere and show the ID card, either to our office or some contracted place, or they may use a notary, because the notary can provide a check of ID and stamp this in the document. And lately, they can use our e-government services, like the governmental offices called checkpoints, where is the point of presence of the government at many cities and villages, where people can go and do some services like identity verification, and also the electronically via EDL service called data boxes. Also, since the beginning, we wanted to provide some more advanced authentication features as well, not just simple username password. We started with the possibility to use TLS client certificate as part of the authentication. But lately, we have added some others popular two-factor authentication means, like TOTP. And in 2013, 2016, we created our own mobile app that where can user just confirm authentication by single click, and the application received the push notification, and the keys are exchanged via scanning the QR code, so it should be quite easy to use. And in 2019, we implemented FIDO as well. We started the implementation earlier with the U2F protocol, but about at the time the FIDO 2 standard was published, so we switched to FIDO 2 before going to production. So here we are going back to where CZ.NIC enters the eIDAS. We participated in the EU pilot project called STORK2. That was a precedent of the eIDAS regulation. It was a project where the EU was piloting the network of connected gateways called PEPs, Pan-European Proxy Services. So we operated this pilot PEPs, and also the IDP, MyID. That was the only IDP at the moment that was available in Czech Republic. So we cooperated with the government on running this pilot. And when the eIDAS regulation took effect, that we participated on public tender to operate the official eIDAS node. That is the core infrastructure point for the eIDAS regulation. We won the tender, operated that for 2 years, and at the end of the last year, there was a new tender that we also won. So we will operate this eIDAS node for Czech Republic also for next 4 years. And this actually gives us also an opportunity to participate at the eIDAS technical subgroup meetings and cooperation and fund meetings, so we can somehow, at least to some level, influence the heading of this development of the specification for eIDAS. So here is about the situation in Czech Republic. There was the big change in 2018, where the government introduced a new eID architecture based on the gateway called National Identification Authority that interlinks the service providers and identity providers. And they started with the 2 identification means run by government, like official citizen card and some SMS-based authentication. But later they added possibility to also all commercial identity providers, and we were the second commercial identity providers accredited with MyID. At the moment, there are a few more. There are some banks, 5 banks already participate on this in this infrastructure, and also the government has created also mobile app for authentication. So there is some progress. So accreditation in Czech Republic is heavily based on the eIDAS, about the eIDAS regulation. So all the requirements that are put on the eIDAS must be fulfilled. And we decided to accredit the FIDO authenticator as a only mean with the identity verification at the checkpoints at the moment for the beginning. So as was already mentioned, we accredited for the substantial level in August 12 last year. And the requirements for the government that we have agreed on was that we must use the username password plus FIDO authenticator as the second factor. Then the authenticator must be certified for at least L1. And we also received accreditation for level high this year. There are some additional requirements that the L2 certification is required, and the certified secure and the security key must have certified secure element, and PIN must be used. So at the moment, we know that there is at least one security key, GoTrustID Ident key, that fulfills those requirements, so we can use it. But hopefully there'll be some more in the future. We used for the software, we used the Yubico Python FIDO server that we extended for some additional features like the detection of FIDO certification, and our extension is more tied to using the Django framework. So I would guess the immediate question will be why to use the FIDO as a second factor and not a passwordless. So there are several answers. One of them is that it was easier for us to set up and to accredit, but the more advanced answer is that it's actually hard to do that at the moment because the lack of CTAP support in certain browsers, like the Firefox in non-Windows platforms, for example, or the Chrome on the Android. With these browsers, you will not be able to provide a PIN. So it's actually not possible to go passwordless at the moment. The other issue that we faced is that some of the duality in the FIDO certification, where different tracks are for certifying U2F and FIDO2. And we saw in the wild that there are some tokens that if you speak to them U2F, they have no certification, but if you speak with the FIDO2, they have different certification. And actually, this is dependent on the browser. So if the user use for example, Firefox on Linux, they will get a U2F attestation and complete a different certification response. Then the same user will use with the same key the Chrome on Linux. They will receive the different certification. So this is something that we think that probably FIDO Alliance should somehow address in the future. There was also the problem that many popular security keys were not present in an MDS2 because the publication of certification is not mandatory. And for example, the most affordable keys like Windows Hello and Android platform authenticators was not there. So we had to talk to Microsoft and Google to fix it, but it's great that they made it. So those are now most popular security keys used. And the same was for Yubico keys, for Yubi keys, that they're also quite popular here in Czech Republic. And there were some missing U2F certifications because of the difference of software versions that was not in MDS. But again, thanks to Yubico, that they filled all the missing records. But there is more. We would really like to see that iOS 14 a platform authenticating with Touch ID, Face ID to also be certified. And Chromebook recently also published or presented a platform authenticator, but both they don't have the L1 certification. So it'd be great to use that to have them there. I've heard that there are some issues that people behind this project, they are afraid of using the attestation for privacy reasons, but I guess that the attestation is the must for the verification of certification. So this is something that must be addressed as well and probably solved by FIDO Alliance in the future. The platform authenticators are great, definitely. That's most easiest way how to get a secure authenticator. However, they have an issue that they are tied to the device, and this is something that is really hard to explain to user, that if they link the Windows Hello to the account, that they cannot authenticate on any other device. So, and there were some white papers discussing that, how to transfer a platform authenticator to the other bus, but it's a big issue for us as well. And I am aware that at least Google is working to solve that by possibility to connect the Android with the USB or Bluetooth to the laptop to do the remote FIDO authentication, but I'm not aware of what is the progress. So this is just the wrap, the current state. So with all the problems with the platform authenticators, we actually decided to modernize our mobile authentication app and accredit it as well as alternative to FIDO security keys on substantial LoA. So this will be deployed soon. So we will see how this will popular with the connection to the FIDO tokens. And while there has been more than 700,000 subscribers over a year, they all have to re-verify because the previous verification was actually one-off, and we don't know about the current state of the data. So now the new verification must be done. And the new verification actually links the identity with the Czech citizen registry, so the people don't need to do anything more. At the moment, there is more than 15,000 users. They have already passed this verification using FIDO security keys. And actually, there are more FIDO security keys registered, almost 30,000 registered with the platform, but not all of them they are used by the user for this particular service. And something what's before us is definitely the possibility of notification of to EU by our government, because this is something that our government must do. Only the government is supposed to do, even though government recognize us as the official identity for the Czech Republic. They would have to provide all the information to the start the notification process to EU. And we are still discussing with the government what will be the procedure and what will be their requirements to do that. So definitely we would like to do that, but this is still the question when this happens. So that's it. So I'm handing over back to Sebastian.
Right. Thank you, Jaromir, for this great presentation. So here are a few words how ETSI and ENISA has reported on FIDO recently. So just to recap, the FIDO Alliance issued 2 white papers in 2020 that described how to use FIDO for eIDAS services. So it was one introduction of FIDO and eIDAS services, and a bigger one, how to use FIDO with eIDAS services. And you can find the links there to download them. These white papers got distributed through the FIDO Alliance website and got a pretty large recognition. So we have been able to interact with the EU Commission, ETSI and ENISA in 2020 based on those white papers to a large extent. First of all, the European Commission, they issued a so-called eIDAS Inception Impact Assessment. That was due to the eIDAS 2021 update review. So the FIDO Alliance, we created feedback based on white papers, where we of course promoted FIDO and delivered that to the EU Commission. Second, ETSI, which is the European Telecommunication Standardization Institute, they created a report on identity proofing. The FIDO Alliance, once again, we provided feedback to ETSI, and I will come back to in more detail what that happened. And finally, ENISA, this EU cybersecurity agency, they called for a meeting that we joined, and I'm going to tell you in a minute what happened. So first of all, the ETSI report came out in February 2021. So the report was called ETSI TR 119-460, and it was about identity proofing in the EU, in particular remote identity proofing. So a couple of FIDO Alliance members were invited to provide feedback to this ETSI report. And so we did. It was a written report. And of course, we promoted FIDO. And in particular, we stated that FIDO can be used for eIDAS EID level high in order for authentication. And the FIDO Alliance white paper now got referenced in this ETSI report. And this is the first time that FIDO gets recognized in an eIDAS report issued by ETSI. And you have a quote there at the bottom that describes what the content of this report was about. Then ENISA came out with a report in March 2021. So ENISA, that is the EU Cybersecurity Agency. They also issued a report on remote identity proofing. And the reason why both ETSI and ENISA issued such reports was, of course, the COVID pandemic. So remote identity proofing became a very hot topic last year. So the FIDO Alliance went to a meeting together with ENISA, and we provided them feedback. And of course, we promoted FIDO and mentioned to them in the ENISA cybersecurity management group that FIDO can truly be used for eID scheme according to level assurance high. So FIDO is now also referenced as an eID scheme in the ENISA report, and that is the first time it is recognized that way. We have also described this in the blog posts published by the FIDO Alliance that you can read more. And at the bottom, you will also find a quote from the ENISA report about the FIDO Alliance. So that was all from our side, and now we leave the floor open for Q&A.